Hello, wrestling fans, and welcome to another edition of Talmbout Wrestling, right here on the Black Phoenix Network. I am your host, the untouchable JRX, and this is your primary destination for wrestling conversation. Well, we are back once again on another lovely Saturday, wherever you are, and there are no pay-per-views tonight, but there are this weekend. But that's not why we're here. We are going to talk about pay-per-views. We're going to talk a lot of pay-per-view stuff, actually, or PLE, if you want to call it that. We're going to talk about a lot of that. But first, before we do that, I have to say a couple of things. Get the morning announcements out of the way first. First of all, thank you all for tuning in. If you're new here, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. And if you're new here again, thank you for tuning in for the very first time to talk about wrestling. We're a podcast, right? We talk about wrestling. That's what we do here. So if you're new here, make sure you like, share, subscribe. If you're not new here, make sure that you like, share, subscribe. If you're just here in general, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Leave your comments, whether you're watching here on Substack, whether you're watching here on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, make sure you leave a rating and a review. Hey, the key is to engage. I need the engagement. We're still trying to grow. It is about to be June, so we're almost halfway through the year, and I have not yet reached the numbers that I want to hit. And remember, the goal was to have 50 subscribers by the end of the year on Substack. 50 subscribers by the end of the year on Substack. So if you're watching this and you know somebody who loves wrestling and who loves wrestling takes and that type of thing and would love to get it from me, hey, tell them to tune in. Send them a link. Tell them, hey, check this dude out. You know, he be talking about wrestling. And eventually we're going to, move forward. Now, last week was the 40th episode. I did not know that. That means that we are on the road to episode 50, and it would be great to have that 50 by the time we hit 50, but that would be a lot. That would be like one a week, right? But I think we can do that. One a week would be great. So we can hit 50. Well, not really. Maybe. We'll see. So if we can hit 50 subscribers in the next 10 weeks, 9 weeks now, that'd be great. This is episode 41. Time flies. And I didn't recognize that it was episode 41 last week because, quite frankly, I was exhausted as I was doing the show. I'm sure if you watched, you saw me kind of zoning out and probably falling asleep in the stream. That's crazy. Nonetheless, today, not so much, all right? Because it's Saturday. It's actually Saturday now. It's not Friday night like I was doing before. My day is pretty much clear until later. So I have time to talk to you and dive into all the things that we need to dive into. So this one is probably going to be a nice and substantial. Okay, because we got to really talk about what's happening in WWE a little bit, but really about what's happening in AEW. So, thank you for tuning in. Again, engage, like, share, most importantly, subscribe, and tell your friends, tell anyone. Subscribe. I don't know what we're gonna do for 50. I would definitely want to make it special. So I don't know, maybe I get some special guests in here or something. I don't know. Who knows? So episode 50 is coming soon. It's hard to believe it's been 50. You think it would be like 52 would be the thing because it'd be a year mark. But there are some weeks that I took off, right? So even in that, it's kind of crazy. So all that being said, nonetheless, and less the none. Let's do what we came to do, talking about some wrestling. But before we get started, I know what you came for. Your favorite part of the show. It's time for the shirt of the day. We're keeping it low key though. We're keeping it light. Keeping it light today. Light work. This is your standard Black Phoenix t-shirt from my rapping days, if you will. And really just in general. It's the traditional Black Phoenix logo. Those shirts. If anyone is interested in merch is coming soon. I probably will hold off on debuting the merch until episode 50 as well. So we'll see about that. We will see about that. But until then, thank you again for tuning in. And let's talk what we came to talk about. And I'm going to start with WWE because there's not that much of the WWE stuff, and I don't want it to seem like a footnote, but it seems like a very good entry thing because we're really going to get in the weeds on AEW because of Double or Nothing and Dynamite / Collision from this week. So we're going to touch on some WWE stuff because let's be honest here, there's not a lot that I'm really even interested in WWE these days. I don't mean to be that way, but it's kind of is what it is, you know. Um, it's that post WrestleMania lull that we tend to get between Mania and SummerSlam, and so we're all these B pay-per-views feel kind of formulaic, and then I'm not watching a lot of WWE these days. Like if I'm home on a Monday, I'll tune in. I'll turn it on maybe sometimes, but it's not premier destination watching for me anymore. Usually, if I do catch it, I may catch like the last hour. If I'm at home and I'm watching, SmackDown, same thing. Now I watch like the clips on YouTube, maybe if something seems interesting, kind of see what's going on. Other than that, I'm not really interested. Um, so there's not a lot that I'm interested in WWE. I like what's happening with Trick. Trick is the United States champion. He vanquished Sami Zayn. Apparently, Sami is um, locking in with his heel turn. Is getting closer and closer to officially being a heel, even though he's kind of been getting heel reactions and doing heel things. He's probably going to officially become a heel very soon. Um, so we got Trick as your United States champion, and apparently, and so now we're doing this thing between we're finally getting the Trick and Carmelo stuff that we've been looking to get, and now we're roping Ricky Saints into the mix. And I'll be honest, I kind of like this. I'm not sure what direction it's gonna go. Like bringing Ricky in, bringing him right to there. Ricky feels weird on main roster to me. Doesn't feel like he's gonna be like I don't know, but maybe that's the AEW bias in me. That's like you should have stayed in AEW. You had some. You didn't feel like you don't feel like small fish in this big pond, like like you do now in AEW. AEW, you felt like you were on a trajectory to really become like look at what happened with Darby, right? And Darby is champ. Ricky could have absolutely been seen as a unique champ, and I'm not sure what happened there, but him and WWE already feels swallowed up by the system, basically. For all the personality, for all the charisma, sitting him next to Trick, not even close. Put him in there. I mean, him and Carmelo, cook, but Trick is such an oversight. Like him and Lil Yachty, and it's weird now because now Carmelo. So on SmackDown last night, Carmelo came out to confront Trick, and they kind of had a little battle. And in that, Trick saying, you wouldn't think that the history of their dynamic is that Carmelo was the star and Trick was basically the little Yachty of that situation. For how much now it and maybe that's some of the treatment that Carmelo had on main roster when he got there. But even in NXT, once that happened, once they split, you could just see that it was going to become that immediately. And once Carmelo got the main roster, and you kind of saw they didn't bury him per se, but they just kind of tucked him away, doing a lot of nothing. And his momentum stalled. Like had they treated him the way they're treating Trick, and then Trick just has more charisma anyway. So yeah, there's a lot of that kind of at play for Trick and Carmelo. Ricky, bless his heart. Uh, but we'll see. We'll see. We'll see what happens. Ricky may end up back in AEW before it's over. Just saying. Nonetheless, so that's happening there. We got Cody and Gunther. I hadn't been paying attention to that. I don't really want. Jade and Rhea are still doing a thing. You got Charlotte and Alexa in there, and like, yeah, okay, it's happening, I guess. Um, it's just a lot of there's like one thing on both shows. And truth of the matter, the only thing that I'm actually mostly interested in is usually around um, the three kind of black pillars of NXT that just came to the main roster between Oba and Trick and Javon, um, and some of the Jacob Fatu stuff. Royce Keys, aka Powerhouse Hobbs, kinda, but again, my AEW bias kind of kicks in. I'm like, I can't see them just doing great by. Listen, there's only two that they've done even remotely decent by. Three, maybe. Obviously, Cody. They needed to do great by Cody because if they did not do great by Cody, no one else from AEW would even think about coming over to WWE with any kind of positive um, intention. Jade, they did pretty good by Jade for the most part. Now, especially, um, Penta has had a really good run since being uh, in WWE. So then there's others who are like, I mean, they've had a decent run at best, but it hadn't like, maybe it's too soon to tell with Ricky. He had a pretty decent run at NXT. He was NXT champion, North American champion. So he had a decent run at NXT. Same thing with Blake Monroe um, / Mariah May. She's had a pretty decent run. Nothing will match what they did with her in AEW, but we'll see what happens. Maybe Ray Phoenix, for everything that they're doing right with Penta, where is Ray Phoenix? Ethan Page, doing decent by him as well. North American champion, NXT champion. Now he's on main roster in contention for the Intercontinental Championship. So maybe. But like Miro / Rusev came back and he's kind of doing some stuff now. He's on TV now a little more often. Don't know where that's going to lead to anything. Like that's, I guess he's in the Intercontinental Championship mix. So go figure. Who else we got? That recently came over, or that has come over. Um, those are the biggest names I can think of. Anybody else doing anything, I can't really even. Yeah. So I mean, the only three that you can look at that are really thriving, you would say, are Penta, because Penta didn't have anything single related in AEW. Using mainly as a tag team guy. Um, like I say, Jade is getting there at least. She's in the running. She's championship. You know, she's held the quote unquote women's world championship that she hadn't held in AEW. So there's that, as opposed to the mid card title. Even though the mid card title was generally created for her in AEW, so there's that. And of course Cody. So I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see. Of course, there's CM Punk. I guess you could say CM Punk. Whatever. Because he finally main event at WrestleMania twice now. Go figure. So there aren't a lot. There aren't a lot of AEW to WWE super success stories. Some of them are still too early to see, but it is what it is. That notwithstanding, so there's not a lot happening there in WWE world that I'm that interested in. Like I said, I mentioned the Trick, anything that's going on with Trick, and by extension, Carmelo, and I even like that they threw Ricky Saints in there, and I think that triple threat could be very interesting. We'll see. Javon kind of is still also hovering in the Intercontinental scene because it's basically all the people that were in the ladder match from Mania and like Ethan Page, and maybe not even all of them. Right now it seems like it's Rusev. Maybe. I guess he's still in there. Ethan Page, Javon Evans, Penta. Those are the four off the top of my head that are kind of hovering in that picture. Maybe Ray. I don't know. So, so in saying that, then we get to Opa. And we talked about WrestleMania, and only I said for weeks, you have one job, WWE. You have one job. That job is to make sure that Oba goes over Brock Lesnar. I don't care about the match per se, but Oba has to go over Brock Lesnar. There's no other way to do this. You will, you will plant, you will completely bury. Like there was no version of this that's like, oh, he looked great in the loss. He lost, but he looked great in the loss, and they built a star. No, there was no other pathway to that match. If you had him lose to Brock, you buried him. And they did it great. But not only did he win, he squashed Brock. Squashed Brock in a matter of minutes. And then Brock retired. Took off his boots. There was a whole big thing. Oh, Brock's retired. Thank you, Brock. They came out with thank you, Brock merchandise afterwards. Now, we're looking at this from the outside, especially those of us who kind of predicted this type of thing, is that we looked at it and said, okay, well, I mean, we thought there was going to be the Gunther match and that Gunther was going to be the one to retire, but now this doesn't make any sense. But hey, if he let Owa be the one, and this is a nice WrestleMania moment, then cool. Great. And now Oba has retired Brock Lesnar. And so coming out of Mania, what do you do? Because the only thing, quote unquote, bigger than beating Brock is winning the title. And specifically, winning the title from somebody like a Roman Reigns. Maybe a Cody Rhodes too, but definitely Roman Reigns. Because the only person to really hand it to Brock the way Brock hands it to everybody else has been Roman. So it's almost like there's this like transference of things. So we go back to the streak. And the Undertaker beat all these legends with the streak until Brock beat him. So now all that prestige from the streak is now transferred onto Brock as the person who ended the streak. So now beating the streak was this thing. Trying to break the streak, ending the streak was this thing that people chased. And then once Brock did it, Brock became the thing for people to chase. And Brock was usually in the title picture after that, because that's when he squashed John Cena. Great. I was cool with all of that. That made perfectly good sense. I'm not one of those people who thinks that Brock shouldn't have ended the streak. There are people that I think probably would have been better served by it, but for what they did with it, I understand. So Brock becomes the guy. And the next person up is supposed to be Roman Reigns. And now Brock becomes Roman's obstacle. Because Roman isn't certified, isn't cemented until he beats Brock. And not like these, because here's the thing, in those years, some of them were fluky. So it wasn't until, truthfully, he beat him like eventually. So the first match was at Mania 31. Then they ran it back at like Mania. So like he didn't win then, never beat him. He finally wins the title at like Survivor Series, loses it, Rumble, Triple H at that Mania 32. I forget who he ultimately lost it back to Seth, actually, who then lost it to Dean Ambrose. So now he's kind of out of the running. So now he's nowhere near it for a while. He kind of flounders. He's back in the picture at 34 in New Orleans. No. No, 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 no. Let's run it back. Let's run it back. 33. I skipped 33. 33, he also defeats The Undertaker, but there's no streak attached. And this was a very, like, immobile Undertaker. But at that point, then that only puts him and Brock as the two people who have beat The Undertaker at WrestleMania. All right. So now Roman has his own aura, not as much as Brock did for breaking the streak, but now they're two of they're the only two of their kind. And eventually, because it did happen at 34, still didn't beat him. Eventually, I think it was at SummerSlam, maybe in 20, what was that, 18, that he finally beat Brock, if I'm not mistaken. Finally. But even that wasn't the one because it was so fluky. Because I think that's when Braun came out. There was a lot going on there. I would have to look that up. So now we go into where we at? 2018. Finally beats Brock. Has to relinquish the title because of the leukemia. And I think my timeline's right. I could be wrong. I could be slightly off. But I don't think I am. I don't think I am. And so eventually, Brock wins the title again. So Brock is still Brock, even for the times he's been knocked off the perch, he was still he still had the aura. You weren't knocking the aura of Brock off yet. And then it just kind of went away. It never really got diminished. Seth beat Brock, still really didn't do anything. Like beating him didn't become um beating him wasn't the litmus. It had to be kind of dominating, owning Brock, if you will. So it wasn't until Tribal Chief era that Roman finally felt like now he's on Brock's level. Now, when he beat him a few times. He beat him at SummerSlam. He beat him like at another pay per view. He finally beat him again at WrestleMania when they unified the titles. Even though so that's the thing. So so all of that led to now Roman feels like the obstacle. But just like with Roman beating The Undertaker after Brock beat The Undertaker, now we're in the same position when it comes to over. So I said there was a long way around to get to back to where we are now. I had to give a little background. So now Oba beats Brock at WrestleMania. And the only thing that's bigger than beating Brock at WrestleMania would be winning the championship. And not just beating Brock, but like dominating, squashing Brock. Because nobody, even Roman, didn't squash Brock. So I saw a lot of the complaints. Because a lot of people thought instantly, okay, cool. Now go put the now he beat Brock. At the next pay-per-view, you got to put the belt on him, have him beat Roman. That could have happened, but there is some narrative meat on the bone for Roman and the bloodline. Not a whole lot, but you got Jacob Fatu in there. He's on Raw now. There are a lot of people that could challenge. You still got some stuff with Seth in there that you can do eventually, once or twice. That could be the big SummerSlam match, but that's not what I think we should have done or should be doing. So, I mean, so there's things to do to where you wouldn't put the title on her. But I wouldn't I wouldn't have fast tracked Oba to winning because Oba winning the title also needs to be a huge moment at a huge show. Hold it off to SummerSlam. Well, I saw a lot of people saying, "Well, what do you do?" Because Brock was the biggest, the second biggest prize basically to to beating a Roman. Which again, because again, I said maybe Cody, but I'm like even Cody been beaten a few times here and there, so it doesn't feel like it wouldn't have the cachet that it would otherwise. So what do you do with Oba until then? So he's been doing like this open challenge thing where he pretty much squashes people here and there. I saw people saying like, "Oh, it's not working because we know he's going to win. There's no suspense." Well, whatever. Again, my thing was have him squash people to the King of the Ring, put him in the King of the Ring tournament, have him run through the the bracket. Basically, he's the King of the Ring, automatically gets his shot at SummerSlam, and then that's how we do it. It's simple. And if nothing else, there's the analog to it's the not analog. Well, maybe it's analog. It's the very same thing that happened with Brock. I laid this out before. You understand, but I'm laying it out again. To me, it makes perfectly good sense. But apparently, no, it doesn't. A couple of weeks ago on Raw, it's open challenge time, and guess who attacks Obafemi? Brock Lesnar. He's back. Paul Heyman has a contract for Clashing in Italy, and now we're getting the rematch of Oba versus Brock. And why are we doing this? Brock retired. Why are we doing this? Oba squashed him. Why are we doing this? This feels like a very silly thing to do because let's lay this out. If Oba loses to Brock, if Brock beats Oba, if he gets his win back, why? Why? You will. It's even worse, maybe, because before, yeah, he had the momentum. He was very over before Mania. He's over now. He's one of the most over people on Raw. So he's over now. And beating him at Mania gave him unprecedented momentum. So much that everybody was like, put the belt on him. And that should be your plan, to put the belt on him this year. I just say hold it to SummerSlam. That's a very big match that you could do. Hold it till SummerSlam. Now, so if Brock beats him, now it's worse than if he lost to SummerSlam because you gave him the momentum and then snatched it away. He only got the best of him on that Raw. And then I think that was 2 weeks ago. And this week, they did a sit down interview, and Oba kind of had a face to face with Paul Heyman, where he signed the contract. So it hadn't been a lot of like Brock getting his lick back. Basically, it's basically he came and attacked him from behind when nobody thought he was going to be there. So it hadn't been like he and Brock were face to face and Brock got the best of him. Brock came and attacked him from behind. And even in the sit down, he's like, "Oh yeah, he kicked my ass. I done had some ass kicking, but I ain't never had what Obafemi did to me happen." And I said this was it. But then, and now he's back. Nobody asked for this. Nobody said we needed a rematch. We were cool with it being what it was. So now, is Brock here to get his win back? Because that's going to suck. Because again, to what end? Are you going to try to make this a trilogy now? We don't need that. We don't need that. We didn't need a rematch. So him winning the trilogy wouldn't do anything more for his momentum than what he already had. And if he wins, I mean, that's cool. If Oba wins, it's cool. But so now they're gonna have maybe they'll have a longer, more full match. Again, nobody asked for that. We got all the hits we needed out of WrestleMania. Some German suplexes, Did he hit an F5? I think he hit an F5 maybe. We got all the hits. Brock matches aren't long anyway. So what more are we saying that we need? I don't understand. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, it's in the same position of being like one of the opening matches at ESPN on ESPN again. So now I'm really like, what are we doing here? I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know what we are doing. I don't like it. Now I'm gonna make predictions for Clash in Italy because Clash in Italy is tomorrow. I'll make predictions, but I don't like it. I don't like it. I'm not. They're showing this. There's a movie theater showing the show tomorrow. I don't think that I'm going to watch it. I don't have intentions to. Um, but it's in the afternoon, so I could do it and have the rest of the day. I don't know. So let's look at the card. Was probably going to be no, it's not going to be the main event. It may. I'm not really sure. But we got Cody versus Gunther for the WWE Championship. That's Cody. Gunther's not winning the title. It's not gonna happen. Um, is Cody like a 3-time champion now? Yeah. Cody's 3-time champion. Yeah, so Cody's not losing to Gunther. You got Rhea Ripley and Jade in a rematch from Mania. Rhea's gonna win again. We got Roman Reigns and Jacob Fatu in tribal combat for the World Heavyweight Championship. Roman's not losing that either, and they could do it. I don't think they will. It should be Obo eventually, but I don't think Jacob's going to do it. But some of the stuff they're doing with the feud kind of had me like, I'm not sure, but we'll see. But it's a Roman win. I'm still sticking with a Roman win. Becky Lynch versus Sol Ruger for the Intercontinental Championship. AJ just won that back. Here's the thing: Cody hadn't been champion that much long. Like he hadn't had a long reign this time. He won it back maybe a month or so before Mania, or like the week after Elimination Chamber. So you basically say he won it back at like Elimination Chamber or whatever. Um, and it's what, the end of May. So he basically had it from say February, March till now. Rhea just won her title at Mania. Roman just won his title at Mania. Becky just won her title at Mania. Cody's the longest reigning out of everybody on this card. But will they go for changing one of these titles? Because I don't know who's the heel in Roman Reigns, Jacob Fatu. I don't know who's supposed to be the heel. Maybe there just isn't one. I'm looking at the face heel dynamic here. So Cody's a babyface, Rhea's a babyface. Both of those are probably going to win. Roman and Jacob, I think they're both baby faces that do heel stuff. So that one's kind of whatever. So Becky's probably going to beat Sol Ruka for the Intercontinental Championship. However, if there's one thing on here, okay. So here's my pick: Cody's going to beat Gunther. Rhea beats Jade. Roman beats Jacob Fatu. Sol Ruka might beat Becky Lynch for the Intercontinental Championship, even though she just won it back. I could see that one. That's the one that I could see. There's an off chance of Jacob Fatu, and I highly doubt Gunther beats Cody. But I'm sticking with my picks: Cody over Gunther, Rhea over Jade, Roman over Fatu. I'll go with Sol Ruka over Becky Lynch, and I don't give a damn what the betting odds say. Oba over Brock, because if you do anything else, this is why I won't go watch it, because I'll walk out of the movie theater if you do this. will. Oba over Brock. So those are my picks. Cody, Rhea, Roman, Sol Ruka, Oba Femi. It's 5 matches. We'll see how it goes. WWE, to quote somebody who's very important in my life, don't piss me off. Do not piss me off. That's all I got to say about it. I'm done with WWE talk other than that. Because, I mean, there's nothing else. But let's talk about some AEW. That's right, AEW. I'm going to move. Actually, I'm going to keep that here. I'm going to move you up here. Doing a little cleaning around the house. There we go. All right. So, we just witnessed Double or Nothing, and a lot of people are calling it one of the best, if not the best, AEW pay-per-view ever. You want to hear a funny thing? You hear that 2 or 3 times a year with AEW, man. We were just talking about Revolution being the best pay-per-view AEW has ever done. And here we are a few months later talking about it, Double or Nothing. And I can guarantee you that All In probably be right there with it. So what does that tell you? What does that tell you? And I'm not even gonna make the WWE comparison that I would normally make. We know what WWE is these days. That's not even a criteria for WWE, even though it could be, because Evolution was considered a really good show last year that they won't do regularly for some reason. Dave Meltzer, and I know people feel a way about Dave. Dave Meltzer rated the majority of this show with anywhere between 4 and 5 stars. And as for me and my picks, I was only off on 1. And that's because it was a toss up and I have no idea how that tournament's going to go. So let's get into it. Let's just talk about it. Double or Nothing opened up with Divine Dominion beating Zeta Steel, Viva Van. I did not see that match at all. Not sure why. Maybe it was on and I didn't know it, or maybe I was having some issues getting stuff in place this week, so maybe that has a lot to do with it. I'm not sure. By the time I tuned in, and we were obviously smack dab in the middle of Death Riders versus the Ops. Death Riders get the win, of course. That's who I predicted. Okay, I'm up 2. All right, I'm up 2. Main event of the pre-show was, which I figured, I thought this would go differently, but it makes sense. Main event of the pre-show was Boom and Doom, which is AJ, Big Boom, AJ, and QT Marshall. And the conglomeration, Mark Briscoe, Orange Cassidy, Roddy Strong, taking on Shane Taylor Promotions with Shane Taylor, Anthony Ogogo, Sean Dean, Carly Bravo, Lee Moriarty. Of course, I figured Boom and Doom was going to get the win because they never lose those matches. Afterwards, we get an appearance by Mance Warner and New York's own Eddie Kingston, because of course you had to throw him in there somewhere. Not sure why he didn't have a match, but he also hadn't been on TV, so there's that. Huge pop for Eddie Kingston. And then, before we get into the main show, we get Mick Foley. Yes, Mick Foley, who was doing pre-show work with Renee Paquette. We get Mick Foley in the ring, giving his predictions on the main event. He says, I think Darby's going to win it. Out comes MJF, of course, and we finally, Bizarro World, finally get MJF and Mick Foley face to face. And that's one of those things that you just thought, like, man, this would be fantastic. A nice little promo battle between MJF and Mick Foley. And you could tell Mick got that feeling back. He even said, he's like, I never thought that I would get this feeling in my career again. AEW special, man. I'm trying to tell you. We want to hate. People want to hate. People want to downplay. People want to talk. People want this company out of business. It's not going nowhere. People been trying to put TNA out of business for the last 30 years. Okay, maybe not 30. Definitely at least 25, 24, 20 plus. So Is what it is. Um, MJF kicks Mick Foley in the balls. Out comes Darby to make the save. And then Mick Foley gives Darby a very rousing pep talk to lead into the main show. So we open up the show with Cajun Cope against FTR in a New York Street Fight I Quit match, and this was fantastic. This is one of those matches that, believe it or not, that Dave Meltzer gave 5 stars in a Cope and Cage match. We got a flaming table spot. We got Beth Copeland back. Not Beth Phoenix. Beth Copeland back. There was an appearance by Spike. This was great. This was really great. Of course, Cajun Cope came away with the win and the AEW World Tag Team Championships, which kind of figured they would. And then I'm going to stick with what I have been doing here lately. When it comes to doing my reviews, is tying what happened at the pay-per-view with what happened on the Fallout on Dynamite. So Cajun Cope come to the ring on Dynamite. They have their basically quote unquote celebration speech. And so they say, for the benefit of those with flash photography, Cage is like, no, I'm not doing that. It's 2026. People don't even have flash photography anymore. Nope, not doing it. Cope goes, I thought about that. Hold on. Goes under the ring, gets a bag that is filled with disposable cameras. Where did you get that many disposable cameras in 2026? Where are they selling them? And I think they were Durafilm, if I recall correctly. I remember how those look. I think they were Durafilm. Where'd you get that many cameras from, man? And so you have to be of a certain age to even know what a digital camera is. Not a digital camera, but a disposable camera. Because I saw it and it was nostalgia. Because I was like, I recall having many a disposable camera in my day. That was a wild time, man. That was a wild time. Wow. And so he goes about handing the disposable cameras out to people in the audience for the benefit of flash photography. Because they were going to do the 5-second pose thing, obviously. If you know, you know. Right? Before they could hit the pose, out come the dogs, Clark Connors, David Finlay, attack Cajun Cope. Really went to work on Cage's arm that's still injured, apparently. Laid out Cope with the spear, and then hit their own 5-second pose over Cajun Cope and declare themselves the next AEW World Tag Team Champions. So that's probably not going to be like a pay-per-view program. We're probably going to get that on like a Raw or something. Or, I'm sorry, a Dynamite or a Collision or something like that. Probably a Dynamite. Not sure what Cajun Cope are going to do for Forbidden Door. That's a very interesting prospect, though. That is a very interesting prospect of what could they do at Forbidden Door. I don't know if there's any dream matches, but line them up. Line them up. Next up, the match that I was waiting for, that I knew was going to bang. We got Konosuke Takeshita taking on Kazuchika Okada for the International Championship, finally. And this was the second match that Dave gave 5 stars. And I knew this was going to be a 5-star match when I was watching. I'm like, oh yeah, this is doing everything that I knew it would do. Absolutely. The only thing that would have probably made this get 6 or 7 and made this undeniable is maybe like main event spot in the Tokyo Dome. But as the second match on Double or Nothing, fantastic. Everything I needed it to be. Absolutely. And of course, Takeshita comes away with the dub. Great match. Great match. So then afterwards, out come the Don Callis family. And it looks a little bit like, so somewhere in the match, Don Callis tries to like call off Takeshita a little bit. I want to say he may have did it for Okada as well. But Takeshita's like, man, I ain't trying to hit it. So afterwards, the Don Callis family comes out. It looks like it's about to go down on one Takeshita until the Proto Star makes his return. Kyle Fletcher is back in the building, and it looks like he's here to help Okada. Sorry, Takeshita. And I'm looking at the positioning, and here's my problem with wrestling is that I can usually see a turn coming from a mile away. Or maybe not even a turn, but like a certain move. Because you can see the positioning of people and how they put themselves in position for certain things to happen. And usually the best way to like do stuff like that is to subvert by doing the thing but not doing the thing, doing the positioning but not doing the thing. So Don Callis' family backs off because Kyle's standing with Takeshita. The family backs off. Kyle picks up the belt, gives it to Takeshita, hugs him, raises his hand. And then I notice none of the Don Callis family has actually left. They're kind of lingering around the ring in the background of the shot. I thought, oh, they're not gone yet. This isn't over. Because if they were done, if this was all that was going to happen, they would have been up the ramp. They're still hanging around the ring. So sure enough, Kyle Fletcher nails Takeshita with a clothesline, brutally attacks, hit him with a brain buster, hits him with the championship. He leaves with the Don Callis family. Can't say that it's a heel turn from Kyle because he was already a heel, but it was something crazy. So then on Dynamite, we get Kyle Fletcher in the ring, giving us his spiel with Don Callis and the Don Callis family. Out comes Takeshita, along with the conglomeration. I'm not sure exactly. You know what? Let me look rather than guess because I don't know if I know exactly what came out of that conversation out of that segment. Let's look. All right. Yeah, that happened. That was on Collision as well. It was an in-ring segment though, wasn't it? Oh, it wasn't. Okay, maybe not. Okay, yeah. So basically, they're saying Takeshita is like I said, just giving the spiel. Okay, yeah. So nothing happened. Takeshita challenged Fletcher to a match. That was it. All right. Moving along on Double or Nothing. And that's gonna hump as well because Kyle Fletcher is you know so that's gonna be wild as well. Next up, we had Athena taking on Mina Shirakawa for the first match in the Women's Owen Hart Cup. Athena came away with the win. This is the match that I got wrong because I gave it to Mina for some reason, but it's because I can't tell you how this tournament is gonna go. Prior to um, last week, I thought that Willow probably was going to be the one to take the whole thing because who else? There's nobody else in the tournament that felt like a favorite. Um, Let me find these brackets again. There we go. So you got Persephone, Hazuki, Alex Windsor are going to be taking on the wild card that's taking Willow's place. Yeah, Mina and Athena. You got Sky Blue and Sari. And again, Athena takes the win. So Athena is the first and only to advance thus far. Um, I I don't know who's the favorite that could take on Tekla at All In. Could it be Athena? Is Athena versus Tekla kind of an All In match? Tekla doesn't have like a rival or any particular person that you look at and say that match will be magic. On the men's side, you could say that. On the men's side, um, now I'll get to this in a minute, but I'll start with the opening round. With whoever the champ would be, whether it was MJF, whether it was even maybe Darby, whether it was uh, a lot of people wanted to be Kenny Omega, perhaps. We have Will Ospreay, Samoa Joe, Mark Davis, Jungle Jack, Perry, Swerve Strickland, Bandito, Claudio, Brody King. A lot of people have already been angling for Will Ospreay to win the whole thing. That's kind of been my pick as well. But if it was like a swerve, still not bad. Still not bad. It's probably going to be Will Ospreay. Still my pick, but still not bad. And if it's Will Ospreay winning the whole thing, Will Ospreay versus MJF could be a huge match. Will Ospreay versus Kenny Omega would be a mega huge match. Will Ospreay versus Darby would have been a good match. You want to do a triple threat with Will Ospreay, MJF, Kenny Omega? I've heard that thrown around. Also, huge match. So there's some favorites here, particularly one favorite. And even if it wasn't, say Swerve actually won the whole thing, because that would be the other person that I think could go the whole way. Again, Swerve versus MJF, we hadn't seen that. Swerve versus Kenny Omega, we have seen that, and we haven't seen it on pay-per-view, and that could be fantastic. Swerve versus Darby, hadn't seen that in a while. And in this form could be fantastic. So it's a little different. With the women's, again, there's no with Tekla as champ, there's no one to really, like I said, that looks like the favorite. Last year it was who was it? Was it Mariah May last year? It sounds right. Or was that the year before? No, it was Mercedes last year. But again, it was Mercedes and it was Tony Storm. So you knew that was going to be a thing. You had Hangman and Will Ospreay in the finals. Jamie Hayter, Mercedes in the other. Now Mercedes, Tony, in All In Texas made a lot of sense. Hangman, Will Ospreay and Hangman, it was actually a toss up because a lot of people were going for Will Ospreay, and it turned out to be a Hangman. Could have went either way. Favorite. Same thing the year before. Mariah May wins the women's. You kind of knew that was coming because Tony was champion, and you figured we were going to Mariah May versus Tony Storm. Bryan Danielson, Hangman, Adam Page in the men's taking to take on Swerve for the championship at All In. Could have went either way. I think people probably still picked that it would be Bryan Danielson though. But it could have been Hangman. Would have made sense. So there have been favorites in this tournament previously. With the women this year, it doesn't feel that way. So I'm not really sure who, depending on who the wild card is, but there's no one who lines up with Tekla necessarily. She kind of feels like this anomaly. You know, had it been like a Jamie Hayter, had we built to Jamie Hayter being the one, that could have been a thing, but she's not in it. So, like I said, there's no one, and then there's a lot of international women in the tournament. I'm like, well, none of them are probably going to win because that doesn't, unless there maybe some New Japan or Stardom history there. Because again, Persephone, Hozuki, no, not to say nobody knows her, but most in trying to sell All In, who do you put there? Persephone that we've only heard of once for real on main roster. Hazuki, has she had a match on main roster that we can recall? Sky Blue, of course, but Sky Blue is in the Triangle of Madness and not high profile. So, Sari, big star in Japan, but here, Alex Windsor, Athena could make sense, particularly if she's going to win. And that would be a really big spot for her. I wouldn't hate Athena in the finals. I actually probably could see Athena in the finals there. Who's on the other side? Depends on who that wild card is. I've seen two people mentioned, and there's only one that I really believe would actually be there, and that is Mercedes. Though, hear me out. Though the other one that I've heard named is Britt Baker. Okay, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't hate Britt Baker versus Tekla. It's not a dream match necessarily, but for Tekla to have someone of prestige to beat, Britt Baker serves that purpose, I think, because um, it's a really um, it's a name, and the pop would be insane for Britt. Britt beating Alex Windsor, I can see that. Beating the winner of Persephone Hazuki, I can see that. Maybe Athena in the finals, and Britt would be taking the win there. I could probably see that. And then she takes on Tekla, and Tekla probably beats her and all that. I wouldn't mind it. I wouldn't mind it. Or it could be Mercedes, and that would be its all. But see, I couldn't see Mercedes winning another Owen necessarily. I mean, I guess she could, and then she would have that distinction of being the first person to win back-to-back Owen tournaments. I can see that. So it's up in the air. It depends on who this wild card is. My pick actually would probably be the wild card. If it's not the wild card, it's Athena. Those are my two. That's my pick. But that's neither. I spent a lot of time on it. We didn't have any more women's matches for Dynamite/Collision. So far, Athena's the only person who has advanced. The wild card match will be on Dynamite next week. They hadn't announced the rest of them, but I can almost be certain those are Collision matches eventually, probably to what's happening on Collision tonight. I want to find that. There's still a Collision tonight as well, which is its own thing. Let's see if I can find the card. There's a Collision preview. All right, so tonight on Collision, we're going to get Takeshita defending the title, international title against Daniel Garcia. Nice. All right. John Moxley and Pac going to take on the Infantry. Okay. Who else? Who else we got? Okay. Hazuki will have her AEW in-ring debut against Maya World with Persephone on commentary. Interesting. So it's not even the tournament match. They're just going to have a match to introduce her. So does that mean she's going to beat Persephone? Or are they just having that to have her introduced and have her not kind of be a jobber? That makes sense. Tajay has a match. I'm assuming. Okay, they have a 5-minute challenge with. Okay, all right. They have the 5-minute eliminator challenge against Divine Dominion. They will probably win that and sit up there having their title shot. They'll be the first people to probably survive. Let's see what we got. Rocky Romero, Lance Archer, Trent Beretta will be taking on the conglomeration for the Trios Championships. Okay, that's going to be a thing. What else is happening on Collision? The Dog taking on the Guns. Lee Moriarty versus, well, he'll have a, okay, he just has a match. That's a lot. That's a lot for a 2 hour show. Mercy. So Hazuki and Maya World conglomeration versus Don Callis family, Takeshi and Daniel Garcia, Divine Dominion versus Tajay. Infantry versus Death Riders, Guns, Dogs, and Lee Moriarty. That's a lot. These shows are packed. That's a lot. So, I mean, we're an hour. I told you this was going to be a pretty substantial. Let's go because there's a lot to cover. There's a lot to cover. All right, moving on. I'm on the third match of the main show. Next, we had Jon Moxley defeating Kyle O'Reilly by submission. Also, another really good match. I think this one got like 4 stars, 4.25 or something like that. Really good match. Jon Moxley finally gets his win back. Kyle got quote unquote hurt, and I think he had like a leg injury within the match. And of course, Jon Moxley smelled blood. Went in, got the win. Nice show of respect afterwards. We got to just move on from this. There was no fallout from this on Dynamite / Collision. Other than, you know, Moxley's working with Ospreay. Seems to be more the story for Mox in that title right now. Next up, we had first match in the men's Owen Hart Cup. Will Ospreay and Samoa Joe. Again, another great, another dream match, basically. Will Ospreay, Samoa Joe. Hell of a match. Super hard strikes. This felt very quick. It was 13 minutes and 55 seconds. It felt very fast. But probably because it felt short. I won't say fast. It felt very short. Probably the shortest men's match on the card. I think it was. Right? Yeah. Shortest men's match on the main card, at least. The pre-show matches, of course, were shorter, but shortest men's match on the main card. And in general, the second shortest match of the whole night. Like I said, for me, it felt fast, but it was still a good match. Still a really good match. Still nailed 4+ stars, of course. Continuing kind of in the story of Will Ospreay being trained by the Death Riders. Again, Will Ospreay gets the win. He advances. Of course, got that one right as well. And next up, we had Swerve Strickland versus Bandito, also for the Owen Hart Cup tournament. To me, this was a little bit longer. So Will Ospreay Joe went 13:55. Swerve and Bandito went 15:20. So it was a little bit longer. Still felt fast, still felt quick. But what they were doing, first of all, Swerve comes out in what I did not realize at the time was a sleeveless Beat It jacket. That was a choice. That was a choice, man. That was a choice. Sleeveless Beat It jacket. And what they did in this match was just like, you knew it was going to be crazy. You knew it was going to be a banger. Highlight for most people becomes Swerve is standing on Bandito's shoulders and hits a house call. And I said it right, standing on his shoulders and hits a house call. Wild. The psychology of the match was really good. Both of these guys, you knew they were going to go out there and kill it, and they did. Fantastic match, but Swerve gets the win, of course. advancing in the tournament, which I call. So go figure. Um, was there any fallout from that? Well, here's the thing. I won't even necessarily talk about the fallout, but what I will talk about is um, the tournament itself. So from that, kind of coming out of the Will Ospreay and the Jon Moxley stuff, um, there was a match: Will Ospreay, Jon Moxley, Pac going against the Rascals. Of course, Will Ospreay and the Death Riders get the win. That was on the Collision. Um, Elsewhere in the tournament, we got Claudio versus Brody King. Brody King gets the dub. The Brody King advances. He'll be taking on Swerve again, which I called. So far, my bracket is, I mean, it was pretty easy. The men's tournament was pretty easy to book through. We're probably getting the Swerve Will Ospreay final at Forbidden Door. Why wouldn't you? And of course, Jack Perry versus Mark Davis. Mark Davis gets the win. Mark Davis will be taking on Will Ospreay in the semifinals, which again made sense. There was that thing of like, so they started building Bandito versus Swerve, and they made it an on-heart match. Jack Perry, Mark Davis already kind of feuding because of the national championship, so it made sense that was there. Brody and Claudio, no backstory, but just two kind of house fight, basically. And then Joe and Will Ospreay was the dream match. But the second round made sense for everybody because Mark Davis beats Jack Perry and Will Ospreay beats Joe. Now we have Mark Davis versus Will Ospreay. When Mark Davis beat Will Ospreay, and that's what led to him training with the Death Riders. So now the rematch makes sense. Swerve, Bandito, if Swerve wins, and Brody beats Claudio, now we get in Swerve Brody. Again, makes sense. Swerve beats Brody again, probably. Will Ospreay probably beats Mark Davis, get that win back, and now we have Swerve and Will Ospreay in the finals at Forbidden Door, and that match in itself has all the say less. So it wasn't Forbidden Door that other year that they had a match when Swerve was champ, or was that something else? It may have been something else, but it might have been Forbidden Door. I think it was. I have to see because there was a pay per view when like I said, when Swerve was champion. I think it was. It would have made sense for it to be Forbidden Door 2024. Yep, it was. So probably will be again. Moving along. We had the Fatal 4-Way: Tekla, Hikaru Shida, Jamie Hayter, Chris Statlander for the Women's Championship. A lot kind of came out of this, but not really. Ultimately, Tekla gets the win. It basically turned into Chris Statlander and Jamie Hayter trying to get all their licks back on Tekla. Shida's like, yeah, I'm trying to win this title, yo. The main moment of the match comes from Chris Statlander has Tekla pinned. Shida cracks her with the kendo stick. Eventually, Tekla gets the win. 1, 2, 3, retains. Some of the fallout here is nothing happened on Tekla end. Nothing really happened on the Jamie Hayter end. But Chris Statlander and Hikaru Shida then in the main event of Collision had a Philly street fight that was brutal. There were light tubes. I think there was a table spot maybe. Statlander gets the win. So we'll see where it goes from there. I guess we've solidified Shida's heel turn, but I'm not really sure. So we'll see. Next up was the thing y'all know I was looking forward to because y'all know how I get down. You know what I like? Stadium Stampede. Stampede. It's a real deal. It's a real deal. Jericho, Hurt Syndicate with Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin. The Elite, Kenny Omega, Jungle J. Perry, Matt, Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks with MVP. Defeated The Demand, Ricochet, Bishop Khan, Toa Leona, Don Callis family, which is Mark Davis, Andrade and Lidlo, and the Dogs, Clark Connors and David Finlay by pinfall. This one was a stadium stampede. It's a little different than some of the other ones. There have been like 3 stadium stampedes, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe 4. I don't know how many Anarchy in the arenas. Usually so this one was kind of strange from the space that they couldn't go out into the crowd. And so since they couldn't go out into the crowd, it was basically a lot of in-ring, around the ring, and backstage stuff. Whole lot of just cameos and all the stuff you would expect from a stadium stampede. You had this cameo by Leo Rush, which was interesting. In his kind of whatever this gimmick, the Golem gimmick, I guess you would call it, or whatever we're calling it, Black Heart, Dark Heart, Leo Rush, with Bobby Lashley, oddly enough. And I didn't even connect Bobby Lashley and Leo Rush until after the fact. I was like, oh, there is a relationship there. That made perfectly good sense. I didn't even catch why that cameo was so interesting. And I wish they had did some kind of thing as a recognition, but I guess them being on screen together was enough. So that was cool. You had randomly Satnam Singh had a cameo in the back somewhere. The intros to that were really cool. A lot of people have been mentioning that. So the intros, really neat. Love when they do that type of thing. Ultimately, as I predicted, Team Jericho gets the win. They were like table spot. There was a lot. This match had everything. It was everything. Was it my favorite Stadium Stampede? Probably not. The first one probably still stands out the most to me. But I'll have to watch all of them. Hey, AEW, if you want to make like a playlist on YouTube of all the Stadium Stampede and Anarchy and the arena matches, I'm with it. Or anything of the like. You gotta watch out of me. You gotta watch out of me. All right, just throwing that out there. Just throwing that out there. This match was fantastic, and out of that, then we got Jericho versus Ricochet. Jericho finally gets the win over Ricochet 1-on-1. No interference, no nothing. Hurt Syndicate wasn't on TV. Kenny Omega. So Dynamite opens up with exclusive footage of after Double or Nothing, where Will Ospreay's on his way to the trainer's room. He gets in there. Kenny Omega's there. We have another chat between Kenny Omega and Will Ospreay, where Kenny's kind of questioning him, like, hey, the Death Riders? That's a choice. You know, he's like, you could have came to me. Like, I had your back, so why would you? No, that's a stretch. Will Ospreay's kind of like, well, yeah, I would have came to you if you were ever here. You know, you're never here, so how could I come to you? They kind of leave it at that. Then Mox shows up. He's like, you know, what it do? So Will leaves with the Death Rider, leaves with Mox basically. Kenny's like, hey, be careful with those guys. They're intense, you know. Just watch your back. Be careful. Will Ospreay is basically like, hey, don't give up on that title. This is now the second backstage interaction we've seen, quote unquote, post pay-per-view interaction that we've seen, because it was the same thing after Dynasty. So if we're not heading towards Kenny versus MJF, Kenny versus Will Ospreay. Maybe we're heading towards the triple threat, because how would Kenny become the champion by then? So maybe but then I don't know. Maybe there's something. There's something there. I'm interested to see. I do think that one of those three things is what's happening. We're either getting Will Ospreay versus Kenny. I think Kenny's involved. We've seen this happen a couple of times, so I think Kenny's involved. So we're either seeing Will versus Kenny or Will Kenny MJF. I don't think it's just straight up Will versus MJF. So it could be, but I don't think we're doing that. Who else? Let's see. Jack Perry, of course, was in the Owen, but he lost to Mark Davis. Matt Jackson and Nick Jack, the Bucks, didn't do anything. I don't recall anything that they did on Dynamite or Collision. Of course, the demand. Mark Davis advanced. Andrade took on Ace Austin in a really good match that I think was on Collision, the Collision portion of the show. And I want to say that he put his head in the ring for MJF as well. Get to that in a minute. And the Dogs, of course, as I mentioned earlier, attack Hayden Cope. So that's the fallout there. And next we have our main event. Now let's start with this before we even get to the main event. The setup for Double or Nothing was reminiscent of scaffolding in New York. If you've been to New York, you know. I've been to New York, so I know. And I thought there was just a one-off about the time that I was there. But apparently this is a regular thing because I remember walking under a bunch of scaffolding and thinking like, there's a lot of scaffolding going on here in New York. So apparently it's just a regular thing. Apparently it never goes away. So much so that they built the set to represent the scaffolding in New York. So all right, cool. And when you look at that and you think about who is in this main event, you think. And then when so MJF comes out, and there's a table with a pair of clippers and a chair. There's a platform with a table on it with the clippers, and then there's a barber chair. Traditional hair match setup. And you think this is set up perfectly for Darby to jump off of. So Darby comes out, match gets started. Somehow MJF ends up out of the ring, and Darby goes for a dive, but his legs clip the ropes, and he kind of folds, but he folds perfectly enough to not land on his head, but it still looks gnarly. So I have this thing about wrestling where like anything that I look at that somebody can get visibly injured makes me cringe. And it's a lot of basic stuff, a lot of dives, because I'm like, because knees are so fragile, legs are so fragile. I watched the Sid Vicious leg break, and I've seen other situations like that. I tried to not, but I watched Ray Phoenix's arm get bent back the other way. And that wasn't even a break, oddly enough. So I've seen these things, and I try to. And anytime I see it, it's like, back body drops, dives, sometimes even moonsaults because legs are tricky. So anytime Darby is on the move, I'm just like, oh no, don't do that, no. So again, another amazing match though. He recovered just fine. 6 spots that you come to imagine Darby doing, throwing his body all around. Eventually we get to the top of the stage where, of course, as predicted, Darby coffin drops off the top of the scaffolding onto the table with Max on it. That's not the win. MJF gets the dub with a second rope tombstone, and it's good on that ended the match. The story here basically is what it has been since Darby won the title, that Darby was going to run himself into the ground, and MJF has barely wrestled at all since then. And it would be his undoing, basically, and it was. He just ran out of gas. He had the sharpshooter, no, I'm sorry, the Scorpion Deathlock on at one point and passed out like he did with the Sammy Guevara match. So MJF gets the win. They're bringing out a stretcher for him. MJF seems like he's going to attack Darby on the stretcher. Out comes Kevin Knight for the save. And so MJF leaves, they're rolling the stretcher up, and then they position the stretcher in a way. And Kevin Knight is on the ropes, on the turnbuckle, kind of taunting at MJF. But the positioning of everything, again, I know wrestling. And they're not as slick about a lot of stuff that they sometimes used to try to be. And I'm like, oh, he's going to jump off of that. And sure enough, Kevin Knight hits a UFO splash from the top rope to Darby on the stretcher on the floor, knocks over the gurney, basically. Double or Nothing goes off the air with Kevin Knight turning heel on Darby Allin. Apparently, there are people who didn't see this coming. Because for me, I'm like, he's a heel. He's already a heel. He's been a heel. It's not new. They was, but apparently there are people who didn't think it was going to be a thing. I always thought it was going to be a thing. So I wasn't shocked at all. Go figure. And that is Double or Nothing. Double or Nothing was an amazing show. It was a really good show. I think Revolution, for my money, probably was better. It was really good. Double or Nothing was really good. It was a lot of all the matches delivered. Women's matches are in a weird place right now because Tekla as champion doesn't have any like natural rivals, but she's like just this general heel, and there's no like story there of who she should be facing. The stat thing made sense, but since she's been champion, like she's had challengers, but it just hadn't felt like anybody. They hadn't really built feuds for her. Even that women's match, it felt like it was kind of just booked out of nowhere. So they're kind of doing that. So we'll see. I think there's something interesting that we could do going into Forbidden Door with her, given her connections to Japan. So maybe there's something there. And like I said, and then next will be All In with whoever wins the Owen. So there's some interesting stuff we could be doing there, but the women's division it's not in a bad place, despite what a lot of people were saying after Dynamite this week, because there wasn't a whole lot of women's action. But like some weeks it's like that. But they have done a lot better with the women's division over the last like a year or plus. And especially considering we're doing that and Mercedes not even back. Mercedes isn't back yet, and Tony's still gone. Tony's gone for the rest of the year at least. So again, the women's division is your two biggest women's stars aren't on TV right now. So you're having to kind of, whatever. Now, could there be more? Sure. We could have had at least one of the Owens matches on there, and I think they're holding off both until Dynamite this week for some reason. I guess they didn't want to do it on the Fallout. Not sure why, but sure they'll figure it out. I'm sure it'll probably be on the next Collision and Dynamite and Collision. I'm sure next week we'll get those matches. So again, I think it was a really good show. There was no Kyle Fletcher match for me to fall asleep on this time, unfortunately. That's not a shot at Kyle Fletcher. I'm just saying. And then Dynamite was really good as well. Even though, like I said, there was the argument about there not being enough women's action on the show, and it's a fair complaint, but it's a complaint that people have had about AEW, about Dynamite forever. And even when they do better, people are still going to complain when they don't do better. So this was one of those weeks that they didn't do better, and people complained. And I'm not saying it's an unfair complaint, but I think it's just kind of one of those things that kind of just is what it is. So let's talk about Dynamite. We'll clear everything that we didn't clear. Kevin Knight opens up the show proper, coming out of the heel tunnel. Basically explains his actions, which go to, before Dynamite, before Double or Nothing, Kevin Knight he came out to make a save, and he basically told Darby, like, hey, don't let us down Sunday. We need you to do this. Don't let us down. And then he lost, and he basically said, he let us down, and that's why I did what I did. He should have won when I know I'm the last person to beat MJF, and I should have been on the card, and I should have been the one. Which I guess makes sense. I beat MJF, so how does he get tired? It's solid enough. So out comes Speedball. Speedball was like, yo, you messed up, yo. You shouldn't have done that. You need to apologize. We can make it right. We can fix this. Kevin Knight. I call man Kevin Jet. Kevin Knight's like, hits him with the microphone, attacks Speedball. He's out of there. Later in the night, we get Speedball challenging Jet to a match for the TNT title, which, again, I feel like we knew it was coming. I never thought that the term was actually on Speedball, even though there were a few times where you would think that because of some of the ways he was talking to him, but like, I didn't think the term was going to be on Speedball, but I also guess I didn't think that it was going to be on Darby either. And I guess either one of those made sense, so go figure. Let's see what else we get. Talked about Chris Jericho versus Ricochet. We had a 4-way Superstation showcase with Orange Cassidy, Leo Rush, Brian Cage, and Roosh. And Roosh gets the win. That's going to come into play a little later. Cool interactions between Leo Rush and Orange Cassidy. Great to see Brian Cage back. Don Callis family made an appearance, including the return of Jake Doyle. This is a funny thing. So Brian Cage comes out. Brian Cage now has like the full, it's not like a full beard. It's kind of like a painted on full beard, whatever. He has his hair doing the thing. I'm like, I don't remember for real, but he kind of reminds me of like what Jake Doyle looked like. Jake Doyle kind of looked like before he came back. Like if you teamed him with Mark Davis again, it'll be just fine. And then that was it. And I was like, I wonder what happened to Jake something. Not Jake Doyle. I hadn't heard that from him in a minute. And sure enough, in this match, he makes his return. And again, it's very interesting where the Don Callis family is, right? So here's how this all worked. Funny kind of worked out. Because first you had the Murder Hog Monsters or Murder Hog Machines in Lance Archer and Brian Cage. And then Brian Cage gets hurt. So then you then had there was another one in between before it was Davis and Doyle. So maybe it's Mark Davis and Lance Archer, maybe that was it. And then like Mark Davis got hurt. So then you get Jake Doyle, and then you do a Davis and Doyle, and it's like, okay, cool, we're moving to something big with them. And then Jake Doyle gets hurt. So now Mark Davis is the international champion. No, the national champion. Sorry. Why we have that belt, I don't even know, but neither here nor there. And then Brian Cage comes back. So now, like, are you going to put Brian Cage and Jake Doyle together now? But Lance Archer's still there, so you could do the Murder Hawk Machines again. Murder Hawk, whatever. Machine, Monster, Murder Hawk. Yeah. There's an embarrassment of riches in the Don Callis family. I'm just going to throw that out there. So next up, we have MJF having his celebration. No, next we have a segment backstage. MJF comes talk to Kevin Knight. Thanks for doing what you did. Whatever. Kevin Knight's like, yo, I'm going to be the champion. MJF's like, all right, bet. MJF leaves the scene. Of course, Kyle Fletcher's like, hey, nice belt you got there. Leave that belt alone, man. Move on. You should even have had it the second time to begin with. Whatever. So now MJF has a celebration. He talking this shit. Out comes Mark Briscoe. And he's like, hey, last time we had a match, I beat your punk ass. So I want a title shot. MJF is like, nah. You're not facing the brand material. So no. He's leaving. Out comes Roosh. And Roosh is like, I want a title shot. And MJF is thinking like, you know what? I give you a title shot. Because you look like you could be a champion. So now we're getting MJF versus Roosh. Maybe next week on Dynamite, I'm assuming. That's probably when. Yeah, matter of fact, I know it is because he told him next week. So yeah, so next week on Dynamite, we're getting MJF versus Roosh, which again makes sense. That Roosh has been winning all these matches. We got to be doing something with Roosh soon because, and I hope they weren't doing all that just to have him in this one match and then he's back to nothing. So we'll see. But sometimes they'll do that. Sometimes they'll give you matches to build you up for a title match. So go figure. Let's see. Let's move on. Talked about Claudio and Brody, big house match energy. Talked about Copeland Cage and the Dogs. We had Top Mello and Anna Jay having a tag team match. Quick little something for them. They get the win. Main event of Dynamite was Jack Perry versus Mark Davis. And again, Mark Davis gets the win like a pile driver off the second rope. Sheesh. Of course, we opened up the collision aspect with Protostar and Don Callis in the ring. That's how it will happen. So after the match with Mark Davis, that's why the Don Callis family was out there. After the Mark Davis match, Don Callis family comes out. They open up Collision with the promo. Out comes Takeshita with the conglomeration. He wants a match with Kyle Fletcher. Moving on. Also mentioned Will Ospreay, Peck, and Mel Moxley versus the Rascals. Got the win there. Andrade versus Ace also mentioned that, and the Chris Statler and the Kushida Philly Street fight. So that is where we are. That is AEW Double or Nothing and the Fallout on Dynamite / Collision. Tonight is more Fallout from Collision. So actually getting two quote unquote Collision. Well, I don't know why they did that. I don't know why we couldn't just say it was a 3-hour Collision. I guess you would have had to like, I don't know. I don't know why they did it that way. So we're getting two Collisions. We're getting 3 hours of Collision this week. Because that's definitely going to be because in theory you would think it would make sense if you were doing this 1 hour of Collision and then another hour this week. But for all the matches that they have named for Collision tonight, that definitely is a regular 2-hour show. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 matches. Suzuki might be a bit of a squash. Divine Dominion and Tajay is going to be a 5-minute thing because they're probably going to run the whole 5 minutes. And Lee Moriarty is probably going to have a bit of a squash. But Guns and Dogs is going to be a decent timed match. Same thing with the Infantry Death Riders. Konosuke Takeshita, Daniel Garcia, Conglomeration, Don Callis family. All those are like could be the main event of the show. So they're definitely gonna all have time. This is a 2-hour show. I don't understand. I ain't mad at it. Okay. Also, AEW is heading to Nashville July, let's say 22nd sounds like the right date. The tickets just went on sale, even though I've known about this for like a month now. Yep, July 22nd is going to be another one of these Dynamite Collision tapings. So I definitely will be in the building, Nashville. I will have flyers this time. I'll probably have flyers and merch, wristbands. Definitely gonna have some merch, flyers and merch for anyone who. I need to see that. Yeah, so stay tuned. I'll keep you guys posted. I would love to see my Nashville family and anybody from Memphis that wants to go. Let's do it. Let's my up. I couldn't go to NXT because the snow was on the ground, but this time you're gonna see me in Nashville, July 22nd. You will see me in Nashville, July 22nd, and I may not be alone. We'll see. So that is it. This was a long one. I told you it was gonna be a long one because we had a lot to cover. Last week I've been kind of cutting them short. This year I'm giving you the full Monty. I know what I said. I said what I said. So thank you for tuning in again. Thank you for hanging out this long. This is an hour and a half. Hadn't done that in a while. So thank you for tuning in. We talked about wrestling. Tomorrow is Clash in Italy. Tune in if you like WWE. If you don't, that's fine. I'm sure you don't want to deal with all the ads. That's another thing. 4 hours. this AEW pay-per-view was as long as they all are. It's always a complaint. Oh, it could have been 30 minutes shorter. Of course it could have, but it still wasn't, and it still was a fantastic pay-per-view. So go figure. Um, eight. It started at 7. The pre-show was at 6. The actual show started at 7. Whole show was over by 11 something. Great time, right? 4 hours of show, great time, consistent action. I don't think there was one ad in the whole show, and if it was like DraftKings or something like that. Maybe one or two here and there. Boom. You're going to get an ad between every match tonight. Tomorrow, sorry, it's not tomorrow, it's Sunday, so tomorrow. You're going to get an ad between every match through the whole night. And then they'll be longer. It won't be WrestleMania style. It'll probably be a decent pay-per-view because it won't be WrestleMania style. They'll actually probably give them time to actually see. That's the other thing with WWE. They'll have like bullshit matches for Mania, and then like at Backlash or afterwards, then they'll do like the rematch that actually hits. They've done that a lot over the years. It's not a new phenomenon at all, actually. So, go figure. Anywho, this has been Talmbout Rasslin. I'm your host, the Untouchable J.R. Atkins. Again, thank you for tuning in. If you have watched this far, make sure that you like, that you share, that you subscribe. Make sure that you do all the things. You leave a rating, you leave a comment, you leave a review. Do all the things. Engagement is the key. Whether you're here on Substack, whether you're on YouTube, or whether you're on Spotify at the sound of my voice. Do something. Just do something. Tell a friend, tell a neighbor, tell a wrestling fan, tell whoever you like. Tell a wrestler. Hadn't said that in a while. Tell a wrestler. Yeah. So, thank you again for tuning in once again. This has been Talmbout Rasslin. And until next time, we are out.